Welcome to the Speculator's Reading Room with author Mark Lacunas.
Greetings, curious and opinionated speculators. I'm coming to you under the pen name of Mark Lacunas. I'm currently writing a 3-novel series titled The Subjugation Conspiracy. The first book is titled The Pilot, the second book is titled Pandemonium, Escape from Abduction, and the third book is titled Onslaught. Today's episode, I plan on actually presenting Chapter 1 of The Pilot. In Chapter 1, I'll introduce the actual pilot to the reader, as well as his mixed species crew. There are 2 gray aliens that help him fly an unidentified aerial phenomenon, or what you and I probably grew up knowing as unidentified flying object. There are some curious things about Chapter 1 that I speculate may actually occur in a mixed species crew, as well as some of the technology that's there. And I lay the groundwork for not only the rest of the book, The Pilot, but also for the entire series, The Subjugation Conspiracy. The Subjugation Conspiracy is telling a tale of an ancient conspiracy to subjugate and rule the planet, using the elite humans on the earth, as well as the influence and support and even the leadership of interdimensional beings, aliens. And there's definitely a spiritual connotation with the subjugation conspiracy, though that's not front and center. It is actual foundation for the writings and the speculations that I come up with. So listen, Chapter 1 will be read to you using an artificial intelligent voiceover, and I'll also present the script on screen so that you can follow along. After Chapter 1 is read to you, then I plan on coming back on screen and talk about some of the things that I've presented and explain my speculations, and then open the door for polite commentary to let me hear what your speculations and your thoughts may be. So here goes Chapter 1. I hope you enjoy it. This is Chapter 1 of The Pilot.
Navigator. How long until we reach the surfacing coordinates? Pilot. Stand by. The pilot communicated telepathically with his mixed species crew and asked for the cross-check as he rapidly approached the point of transition from submerged to airborne flight. As his craft slipped through the black abyssal deep of the North Pacific Ocean at several hundred knots per hour, he remained calm and focused on his mission. Initiate an unprovoked, experimental first strike on the world's commercial shipping. Pilot. 1 minute before surfacing. Acknowledged. 1 minute to surfacing. External sensors gave him a spherical image of his ship's environment. He could look below his feet and see the surrounding environment below his vehicle. Above, behind, the same. It was a complete infinite, panoramic, ultra-high-definition view of the world around him, wherever he looked. There was no sense of internal vehicle dimensions, and he had long ago lost any thrill of flying in a virtual, crystal-clear bubble. Just now it was pitch black all around him, save for the momentary streaks of bioluminescent marine life. Embedded in the pilot's mind was a summary of the flight information and the performance of his scout ship, giving him an intuitive understanding of propulsion, navigation, weapons, and communications, all at a mental glance, not unlike a heads-up display, except that the images were in his mental arena. In order to prevent pilot overload, he wore a special helmet that connected the ship's systems and his surgically implanted electronic brain chip. The direct connection between the ship and his brain gave him a speed boost in mental processing and even enhanced his consciousness, giving him an additional mental screen to view. His mind and body were extensions of his vehicle. His other 2 crew members were situated slightly behind him, one on each side. A navigator, weapons operator to his left. The other, a mission support officer, on his right. Unlike the pilot, they did not wear helmets. They were biologically tuned by means of genetic programming to fulfill their duties. But they were also miserably frail, and at times ludicrously narrow-minded, efficient and knowledgeable in their jobs, but unpredictable in situations outside of the norm. And they were naked and smelly, and misshapen and hideous. The pilot considered them things, nothing more than living pieces of equipment. He didn't like either one of them. In fact, he despised them. They were emotionless, void of morality and personality, and incapable of teamwork. Disagreements between the pilot and mission support officers were frequent and had to be settled by higher headquarters. Supreme headquarters, ruled over by the commissioner, set policy and typically didn't get involved with operations. Pilot dissent was the only thing that required arbitration. Higher headquarters controlled all operations and normally acted as the mediator when the rare case of dissent occurred. The pilot was frustrated that Supreme Headquarters had established the requirement of dual-species crews. The commissioner considered them necessary for accountability of the human pilots. And, quite frustratingly for the pilot, there seemed to be no accountability for the argumentative mission support officers who were known to be arrogant, and at times, bordering on rogue in their judgment. The pilot's only consolation was that the Greys had become a diminishing commodity. Their laboratory production, as a synthetic life form, had been substantially curtailed. The commissioner had redirected genetic laboratory capacity, and priorities be applied to other genetic tasks in support of his grand plan. This plan included unthinkable interference with human genetics on a global scale. It was for these reasons that the human pilots had become necessary. However, the human pilots still had certain susceptibilities of conscience and couldn't be fully trusted without oversight. Pilot, on my mark, time to surface. 3, 2, 1, mark. Acknowledged. Surfacing now. As the pilot ordered his scout ship to ascend out of the ocean depths, he observed the engulfing pitch-black panorama turn very rapidly to solid dark blue, then to light blue, and then quite suddenly to a patchwork of ragged clouds forming a grey leaden sky. He was airborne. Throughout this transition, there was no sense of motion or turbulence. Navigator. Airborne. Shifting to aerial flight mode. The pilot shifted the scout ship's scalable mode of operation to aerial flight. Depending on the stage of his mission, he could select submerged, docking, or tactical flight. Acknowledged. Shifting to airborne flight mode. The surface state of the Bering Sea was mountainous. A violent storm was in progress. The howling winds and sheets of horizontal spray were perfect for his novel mission. Now in the sky, he increased speed and continued northward, just past the long arc of the Aleutian Islands. Pilot. Potential target to the northeast. The navigator telepathically signaled a turn to the right. It had detected a merchant vessel's radio beacon, part of the Automatic Information System, or simply AIS, which continuously transmitted to the rest of the world each participating maritime vessel's identity, location, course, and speed. Acknowledged. Turning to the northeast. Navigator. Shifting to tactical mode for possible attack. Acknowledged. Shifting to tactical mode. The pilot adjusted his scout ship's scale of maneuverability again to support the upcoming close-in engagement. In a few seconds, the MV Vulcan Princess appeared. She was a 250-meter cargo vessel, laden with containers stacked high on her main decks. The pilot circled behind the Princess and matched her speed to study his target. Following the required protocol, the pilot ordered the mission support officer, "Inform higher headquarters, we have acquired a target and are ready to attack." The mission support officer telepathically repeated the pilot's order and relayed it to their higher headquarters. Almost instantaneously, an engagement order came into their craft, directing the trio to sink the Vulcan Princess. Official order. Execute directive, first strike. All three heard the order, and the mission support officer repeated it. The navigator also acknowledged telepathically, followed by the pilot. Navigator, arm weapons. Pilot, weapons are armed. Stand by for tactical approach. Both crew members acknowledged. In a wide, curving turn over a 100-mile sweep, the pilot moved back to the south over Atka and Adak Islands, then turned north again. He made an extremely fast, low pass across over the westerly bound Vulcan Princess's midships, between her cargo crane and the ship's bridge. All through his maneuver, there were no sensations of motion in the scout ship. On the Vulcan Princess, the ship's master and first mate were standing behind the helmsman, who was fighting the sea state, in order to keep the cargo containers safe and stable. Comparatively, the Bering Sea wasn't as deep as other oceanic waters, and Princess was near the boundary waters of the deep Pacific. As a result, this area was notorious for rapid changes in sea states, whipped up by wind and weather conditions. It was common to see these rough seas. However, the master and first mate ranked these as the most challenging seas either had ever seen. Helmsman, left 20 degrees rudder. Come left by 45 degrees. Steady on course, 225. Just as the first mate directed the helmsman to make the turn in order to give the Princess a smoother ride over the waves, the scout ship passed rapidly across their decks, from left to right. The master caught a glimpse of it and ran across the enclosed bridge to identify it, but the object was already out of sight. "Did you see that?" he asked the first mate and helmsman. "See what?" the helmsman responded. "I was looking down at the binnacle, tracking our course change." He had his head down, focused inside the bridge. "Yes, I saw it too. It looked like a missile just flew across our cargo decks, maybe 30 feet long and cylindrical, blinding fast." The first mate joined the master on the starboard side of the bridge. "Too much coffee?" the master jokingly asked the first mate. "Maybe not enough," the first mate mumbled, rubbing his tired eyes. Suddenly, a brilliant, white light, shone from a few hundred yards off the starboard side of the ship, caught the master's attention. He briefly saw its source, a small, camper-sized aircraft of some sort hovering motionless in near-hurricane-force winds. "Looks like the landing lights on a helicopter," he suggested to the first mate. He quickly stepped outside onto the starboard bridge wing, letting in a gust of wind and sea spray, then closed the door behind him. He was just in time to see a wide sweeping plasma burst. It struck the cargo ship at her exposed waterline as she crested a 30-foot wave, while at the same time turning to her new course. The molten blob of high-density, superheated air was several thousand degrees above the steel plate's melting point. With the force of 10 tons of dynamite, it impacted her heaving and rolling hull at an elevation that was normally 3 feet below the waterline. The ship shuddered so violently in synchronicity with the plasma strikes that the master fell overboard and immediately disappeared in the churning sea. His brief cry was abruptly cut off and went unheard. "What in the world? Did you see that? Did you feel that?" The first mate's voice was panicky. He moved toward the bridge wing door to consult with the master and noticed he was no longer out there. He knew in an instant he had fallen into the frothing seas. "Helmsman, sound the alarm. Man overboard, starboard side." "Sir, I can't. I'm losing control of the ship. Can't stop the course change. She's listing too hard to starboard. Can't correct." Those were the helmsman's last words. The plasma had opened a 30-foot wide hole that was 3 feet high. Compounding the ship's circumstances, Vulcan Princess was already leaning hard to starboard. As the laden ship crested, then descended the mountainous wave, her starboard side was hull down. When she hit the bottom of the trough, nearly 400 tons of water immediately rushed in with momentous force. Vulcan Princess was doomed. The deck on the bridge continued to lean until coffee cups, charts, binoculars, pens, pencils, and ultimately, the screaming bridge crew all landed on the starboard side of the bridge, briefly piling up on the bridge windows. the helmsman's last and contradictory sensations were the sight of a most glorious scene of underwater blue through the still intact starboard windscreens, while at the same time hearing the first mate's shrieks for help. It was a very brief, frightful moment, mixed with his own terror of certain, imminent death. As soon as he joined the first mate with his own screams, the end happened like a lightning strike. The windscreens catastrophically failed in unison, and the cold sea roared in. Their voices were swallowed, as the princess continued rolling onto her starboard side and capsized. There was no hope for anyone on board, and there was no call for help. On the AIS system, MV Vulcan Princess simply blinked out. No one would notice her disappearance for several hours. The pilot felt a twinge of regret at his successful attack. He couldn't understand exactly why, but he felt bad. When waiting for mission assignments at his deep undersea base, his flight surgeon kept him on a regimen of supplements that helped him cope with the technology of his vehicle. These supplements were also supposed to prevent any strong feelings or reactions during his missions. But still, he had a vague regret about the attack. Without consulting with his flight crew, he flew over the Princess and hovered motionless over the inverted cargo ship, indifferent to the howling winds. Various cargo containers could be seen bobbing and rolling on the violent seas. The pilot thought to himself, this was so easy, as he watched the chaotic scene below him, wondering if he'd see any surviving crew members. There were none. He continued to watch as the MV Vulcan Princess floundered hull up for 20 minutes. Then, after it disappeared in the maelstrom of the Bering Sea, he sped away. Pilot, I have a second vessel, further away, but within our hunting range. The navigator started to coordinate a second attack. Agree. You have approval to engage the second contact. The mission support officer gave its consent and was acting as if it was in charge of the mission. In fact, the mission support officer was only given the responsibility to advise the pilot for mission compliance. The mission support officer routinely misinterpreted its role as being the mission authority and was now directing the pilot's actions. The pilot's irritation was kindled with the bad counsel he was receiving from it. The pilot's orders only authorized one sinking, and he disliked this particular mission support officer a lot. It was useless, pompous, and had no sense of accountability, and now it risked getting him in trouble. The pilot decided to take charge of the situation. Time to return to base. Only a single first strike was ordered. Pilot, continue with the attacks. Mission support officer, no. Returning to base. The mission support officer was insistent and touched a single, unlabeled button on its console and offered a brief message to higher headquarters. Pilot disagrees with mission support officer. Higher headquarters immediately responded with a terse order. Pilot, explain dissent. I have orders for one strike. Strike complete. Returning to base. The mission support officer assesses mission should continue. Orders are needed. Follow mission support officer's direction. No. Contrary to protocols. Stand by. Requesting Supreme Headquarters guidance. The pilot had never experienced this level of arbitration on any of his previous flights, which were restricted to reconnaissance. He knew that a referral to Supreme Headquarters went all the way up to the Commissioner's attention. The flight crew never made eye contact when in flight, which just then was very convenient for the pilot. He loathed the thought of being the focus of their gawking, black, almond-shaped eyes. It was much easier for him to maintain a calm demeanor by paying close attention to his flight controls. He was also grateful that the two crew members were now silent, waiting on clarification. They disgusted the pilot. They knew it. They didn't care. The pilot's fevered tension rose by the moment as they waited. Pilot, orders, Supreme Headquarters, code word, override. Pilot is directed to continue attacks. Storm provides cover to the first strike mission and is useful for initial attack assessments. The Commissioner wants to maximize learning in this phase of the grand plan. Continue attacks. In a calm voice, the pilot simply thought, acknowledged, followed by another thought, like talking to himself, which he was able to keep secret from his crew. I hate the mission support officer. As he continued to fly his scout ship, the Supreme Headquarters override caused him to remember his early training. Telepathic discussions were hard at first, but they became natural after a while. Back then, he wasn't able to hide some thoughts, but now, for the most part, he could control what was heard by others. Navigator, provide guidance for next attack. In less than 10 minutes, a second commercial container ship had been sunk. Over the next 2 months, 6 more commercial ships were sunk. The first storm might have been blamed for 2 of the shipping losses, but so many losses over such a short time period was highly suspicious, especially when they coincided with US and Russian military radar tracks of the pilot's multiple tactical turns over the US-controlled Aleutians. In fact, the US Air Force scrambled fighter jets several times to intervene and escort this intruder back into international airspace, but no visual contact was ever made. And these airspace incursions continued to occur over wider areas of the waters near Alaska, including well south of the Aleutian Island chain. There was a growing concern that these episodes might soon encroach far enough south to include the North American Pacific coastline and even the Hawaiian Islands. Trans-Pacific maritime commerce in the northern Pacific Ocean and Bering Sea was on the verge of being halted. The situation was blossoming into an economic crisis for Pacific Rim nations, and regional government suspicions toward each other had been aroused. Something had to be done. USS Ronald Reagan, one of the US Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, was dispatched to the region. Reagan's mission: deliver carrier strike group. 3's embarked Air Wing, the 17th largest air force in the world, to project power and protect sea lanes in the Bering Sea.
All right, there's chapter 1, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope also that, some of my speculations may have triggered some thinking in your mind about any preconceived notions you have about propulsion systems or transmedium vehicles, the crews that may be flying these vehicles, and also a larger potential conspiracy to genetically modify the human race. These are my speculations and the premise of my book. The pilot you have now seen he's physiologically modified with technology. You'll learn later that he's been genetically modified as well. And his technological modifications allow him to be an extension of the vehicle that he's flying, or vice versa. The vehicle is an extension of the pilot. And in this scenario, the pilot is actually able, wearing a helmet that's connected to the ship, that's connected also to a computer chip that's in his brain, and he's able to actually visually see in his mind the performance of his vessel, see the propulsion system, see the weapons and navigation information, and also to communicate telepathically with the crew members that he have, which are both gray aliens. And that's exclusively how they communicate in the scout ship. The gray aliens, diminishing commodity, laboratory grown, they're infused with genetic intelligence to perform certain jobs. The weapons officer, the navigator weapons officer, it has been genetically infused with intelligence to do his job on a scout ship. And the mission support officer, same thing, been infused with the intelligence to ensure compliance with mission orders. I speculate, not necessarily in the book, that their information and intelligence can be modified or even replaced, such that the mission support officer today would be a compliance officer, and tomorrow be genetically modified, infused with new intelligence to serve another function, perhaps assist with alien abductions. So anyway, um, the propulsion system and the technology that the scout ship uses is space bending, such that the space around the scout ship is moved, so that the scout ship and the occupants in the scout ship have no sensation of motion. It's the space around them and the time around them that's being bent and modified, and this way they can travel at enormous speeds and make very sharp turns and maneuvers. And so that's the technology that I am speculating is on board the UFOs. And you get kind of the ride along in chapter 1 as they make an approach and they attack an innocent, unawares commercial cargo ship that's fighting the heavy sea state just north of the Aleutian Islands in the Bering Sea. So that's chapter 1. You get the idea. It wreaks havoc in the shipping lanes. There's fear, there's suspicion, and the United States Navy decides it's time for an intervention. It sends USS Ronald Reagan up to, cruise those seas, provide eyes on the situation, and presumably to intervene. In chapters 2 through 4, you're going to see that intervention and the problem with a mixed species crew as it tangles with a U.S. fighter jet. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Please stay tuned. Chapter 2, I plan on doing the same thing. I'll use AI voiceover and screenshots to let their viewers follow along, and it will end it up with some additional conversation. I hope you're enjoying the Speculators Reading Room. This is Mark Lacunas, signing off for now.